yeah, my name's Lucy. I studied here at Lincoln between 2018 and 2021 and did an English undergrad degree. Had the best time, and since then have been working in publishing. I work for a company called Bonnier Books UK, which is one of the UK's leading publishing companies. They publish everything from fiction, non-fiction to children's titles, and I'm currently working as an editor across their commercial non-fiction imprints.
Did this question of what am I going to do with an English degree come into your head when you were thinking about choosing that as an undergraduate course to study, or was actually that not really part of your decision?
Yeah, I was going to say, not to sound arrogant, but I always felt that English was so great as in terms of in helping you get employed. It teaches you so many different skills and can be applied to so many different industries that actually I felt it was safe to pick English because I felt that it left my options open.
Mm-hmm. And did you have many discussions at school before you came about those sort of things? Or?
In terms of career?
Yeah.
We started to have sort of career days here and there, but I don't know for you guys sitting here or for anyone watching online, but we didn't really have work experience when I was at school. It seemed to be something they've stopped doing, which I think is a shame. But yeah, it was still very much a grey area for me, and I think naturally the biggest focus was actually just trying to get into Oxford, yeah. And that felt like enough.
Fair enough. Well, so let's move on to that then. So the time when you were here at Oxford, I mean, did you have, when you were here, presumably at some point over the 3 years, this kind of question of what was coming next became more and more important. And I mean, so when did that idea start to take shape, and like what sort of options were you thinking about?
I think that I've always wondered what I will do in the back of my head. Even before I got to university, I've always tried to picture myself in work. I don't know if that's the same perfectionist strands that leads you to somewhere like Oxford, but I've always kind of thought about it. I guess it really kicked in naturally in third year when you could start applying to the internships through the university, and I knew I was going to be leaving soon and would have to make a decision around that. And naturally I had the internal debate of whether to do a master's or not, as most students do. But as I was just saying earlier, it was actually COVID, sort of the pandemic happened just after my halfway haul. So I think that accelerated the process of thinking about what I was going to do, because it kind of changed the trajectory of what university was going to look like for me. So I did 2 internships through the university that were both a week long. One of them was with the Story Museum, which was really fun. They had just done a lot of renovations and I think were just opening up again to the public. So I got to do this project where they were doing this particular exhibition around 1001 great stories. So I did that for a week, and then I did, and that was in person at the museum. And then the second one I did was with a organisation called Patchwork Hub, which is meant to connect people who have disabilities with employers. So very different, but sort of doing marketing and research. So still quite a creative internship.
And so how did you? You said you got those through the university? Was that through the University Career Service?
Yeah, I think it was through the Career Service. They kind of advertised a mix of internships. You could kind of select industries or skills you were interested in, and it would serve you internships that sort of aligned with those. And I remember I just applied to loads. I applied to loads that interested me, and then I happened to get those too. But then I graduated, still felt completely lost with what I wanted to do. Still didn't know then that I was going to end up in publishing or that I would want to pursue that. And I spent quite a few months trying to figure that out and applying to lots of different types of jobs.
So what sort of things what sort of things were you looking at that point?
So I did start looking at publishing. I was also looking at marketing. I was looking at roles in television. I looked at journalism. anything that allowed me to feel I was getting some kind of creative outlet. So yeah.
And what was that? I know, not trying to sort of be triggering, but what was that process like of kind of applying for things? And presumably there were some things that didn't come through. And
yeah, it was really demoralizing. I got rejections for about 6 months after I graduated, which I'm pleased to say now that I've had a chance to meet lots of people is actually a very common experience. And sometimes it's even longer than that, especially when you've sort of set your heart on a particular industry. Yeah, it was hard. It was hard doing relentless kind of applications and trying to sell yourself, which always feels a bit icky. But
and you have to get so invested in the role that you're applying for that it makes it so hard when you don't get it.
And it's really hard because you haven't done the role yet, so you don't even know if you're going to like it. So everything feels like a risk. It's a lot of investment to do upfront for something that you don't actually know if it's what you want. But what I will say is that the process of getting into somewhere like here is grueling and requires resilience. And if you can already kind of get into somewhere like here, you can do that tough bit when you come out and you have to face rejections.
I mean, one of the things I guess you have to do, and you talked earlier about kind of having to sell yourself and how kind of that feels it's quite difficult to do as a thing, and you have to kind of put aside your kind of qualms about doing it. But I mean, how did you sell the value of the English degree that you'd got when you were in those jobs? What were the sorts of things that you talked about in that sense?
I think this is where doing English at Oxford in particular is really helpful because of the tutorial system. That system, one, prepares you to not take anything personally. Two, it makes you really good at editing. You have to read your partner's essay sometimes twice a week and be good at identifying ways that they could make it better, and then be able to do that for yourself. That's the job of an editor. So that tutorial system is so perfect for already helping you to sort of develop your mind in that way. On top of that, obviously the more you read, it helps with your confidence in articulating yourself. I remember we did classes, and each class, I think it was once a term, you would do a presentation. It would be you and one other person in the class would present on that week's theme. And presenting in front of a group of people, I have to do that for my job now. If I want to acquire a book, I have to take it to a meeting called acquisitions, and I have to pitch it to all the various different departments and tell them why I think we should publish it. And I honestly believe that being in my classes has helped me be able to do something like that. So there's obviously the reading element that really helps with publishing, but a lot of the skills that you particularly learn here, because of how the system works, really, I think, can set you up for work very well.
And so I guess, is that something that when you were doing your cover letters and things, did you play really into those aspects of what you'd taken from this kind of, I guess, the specificity of the English degree here and the way it's taught and the way it's structured?
Yeah, well, I think one of the best things about the degree here is that it's constantly encouraging you to put forward your take on something. So I remember one of the biggest distinctions that I had when I was studying here between some of my friends who were maybe studying English at other universities is they were often given a question and then told to write their essay in response to that question. Whereas here, you would be given Charles Dickens, go and write an essay. And you'd be like, where do I start with that? But it was so good because after a while, you get really used to being able to pull a very specific strand out of a very big thing. And I think when you're writing cover letters, it's kind of weirdly a similar process where you're looking at, I don't know, this big publishing company or this specific well-known imprint, and you have to have a unique take on it, and if you want to stand out against everyone else. And I guess the other side as well is, again, going back to the tutorial system, you learn very quickly to not waffle in your essays because they will pick up on it. And it's really good at just helping you kind of, what is the point? Get to the point. And I think that's true of cover letters as well. Sometimes employers are reading. I mean, we've just had a position be advertised for an editorial assistant. I think there were 800 applications. They've had to sit through and read so many answers. You really need to be able to just get to the point and say something unique if they're going to take you seriously and kind of progress you. So I think, yeah, both of those things.
Okay, great. And you mentioned this job that had 800 applicants.
Yeah.
So what are people in your company, in the publishing industry? What are the qualities they're looking for to sift that 800 down to however many they then go and interview?
I think, firstly, and it sounds obvious, but if you're not mentioning the books that specific list is publishing, you're probably going to be discounted, because they will assume that you've probably just fired off that cover letter to every editorial assistant position that's currently going. So showing that you can really understand what that list is doing, what it's publishing at the minute, if you can talk about maybe some of the campaigns that those books have had, what are the values of that list, what is that list trying to do differently to every other list in the industry. That's one thing. I think also ways you can show your market awareness. So companies really value anyone who's ever had book selling experience. I really underestimated how much my Christmas temp job at Waterstones would actually be valued.
Okay, yeah.
And it's interesting because sometimes I think that, and this isn't to say that a publishing master's is a waste, but sometimes I think that maybe a book selling experience might be valued a little bit more than doing something like a publishing master's, just because it shows that you've interacted with customers, you know what people are reading, you know how to sell, you're very well acquainted with kind of the top books that are selling at the minute. You're in it already, you're already part of the industry when you're book selling. So any kind of experience with bookshops is really highly valued.
So I guess from what you're saying, I'm getting sort of the importance of researching the specific role you're applying for, not just publishing, but actually publishing with that publisher and being able to talk to that publisher and what they do and try and show you've done the research there. Yeah. But then I guess that question of the kind of the value of practical internships, is that if you know when you started your degree what you know now, and you knew you wanted to go into publishing, would that have maybe made you kind of think more? Would you have done things differently? Would you have done more specific internship? Would you have done more working in Waterstones, things like that? Do you think there are concrete things that you could have done to kind of pave that way? Yeah,
I think, again, maybe it's an annoying answer, but yes and no. Sometimes I think, maybe I could have worked in more bookshops. Maybe I could have reached out to literary agents to get a sense from them how the industry works. Maybe I could have matched more people on LinkedIn. But then I look back and I'm really grateful that I did do some internships that weren't exactly aligned with publishing, and I still learned skills from them that I use in my job now, and they still led me to where I am now. And so I think that's sometimes a situation where I'm not sure hindsight is that helpful. I think so much of this is based on instinct and trying to vary your experience as much as possible, that I'd still encourage someone to do that. Okay. Even if they feel quite set on one thing. Yeah.
And then actually, not having done that didn't stop you from making that transition into the industry. So, and evidently you always have a degree to do. So, it's not as though you have all of this time to do.
Exactly.
Talking about your role currently, like what does like a day-to-day role, what's it involve in the publishing industry? What do you do every day?
It's really varied, and that's why I like it. I think if I had quite a repetitive job, I would go a bit insane. So yeah, it's really varied. As I said, I work as an editor, so that involves essentially taking a book through the editorial process from the minute that it's acquired. And because I work in non-fiction, they're often acquired at proposal stage, which means they're not fully written yet. So there's an outline, maybe one or two chapters have been drafted at that stage. But then I will either assist the person who's acquired it, so if that's like an editorial director, or if it's a book that I've acquired, I'll work with the author on that initial manuscript, help get it to a stage where it's ready for copy edit and proofread, and then I will kind of oversee that process and get the book ready for publication. We also do things like writing cover copy, which is writing the blurb. Some days you might be briefing the design team on what you think the cover should look like based on what else is out there in the market. A lot of the time you are reading proposals and deciding which ones you think should be published, which ones you want to go for. If you're going after a proposal which is quite competitive, you might have to put a pitch together for the proposal. So it is genuinely very, very varied. And I guess because each book is like a project, it feels like project work in a sense, where you're on a book for 12 to 18 months and you see it through, and then at all the time you're moving on to new ones. So yeah.
How many would you have? Do you tend to work at one at a time and like that, or is it like multiple different projects that you're working on at the same time?
It will be multiple at a time. I would say I normally have about 20 to 25 books a year. And it will be a mix of first format, so the book that's going out in its first sort of hardback outing, but then sometimes it might be a paperback, so it's already been out in hardback for a year and now we're putting it into a kind of a smaller paperback format. So yeah, you're constantly doing multiple books at the same time. And part of that is also because of how the non-fiction genres work. So you get a lot of what they're called New Year, New You titles at the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you get a lot of summer reading, and then you get a lot of business development books in September because, I don't know, apparently business is back to school. And then you get all of the celeb books in the autumn. So yeah, it's kind of, you go through the waves with the genres as well.
And so when you said that you work with the authors kind of in that early stage, what does that look like? Because that sounds quite collaborative, quite creative, in that you're actually kind of having a role in actually crafting them as well as kind of curating them through the process. Yeah,
I think it's different with each author, and again it differs depending on whether I'm assisting a director and they're having that relationship predominantly with the author and I'm there to help that process, or if I'm kind of taking it more on from the beginning. It often involves working out with the author what feels best for them, because I think the interesting thing about working in non-fiction is that a lot of the authors didn't necessarily set out to be writers. They have these other careers or these other things that they've done, other industries that they're working in, and now there's an opportunity that's come to write a book about something that they've done. So it's often about helping them to feel confident in that process as well, because sometimes it's kind of an unexpected part of their journey. So there's that element of it. There's working out with them. Do they want to go away and write the first full draft? Do they want to deliver chapters by chapter? Do they want to have calls periodically to go through the text with you? Do they want you to send back all of your comments and then talk after? It's really different depending on how that specific individual likes to work.
But it sounds like you get quite a lot of, I mean, you talked about it being varied, but it's also quite, it's creative in itself. You're not just kind of editing sounds somehow like you're just kind of taking it and you're tweaking the edges, but actually you're deeply involved in the actual conception sometimes of the book as it's evolving over time.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes it's interesting if you're working with an expert or an academic and they're used to writing in a certain way, and then our job sometimes is to help that text feel like it can appeal to a commercial reader. So sometimes that's what we're doing, is we're working with things like tone or vocabulary, language, or yes, like you said, sometimes structure, trying to find an interesting way to bring all of these ideas together.
And you mentioned that sort of non-fiction, working in non-fiction as an editor is quite, it has some kind of specificity, some quirks to it. I mean, do you think, is it very different working with fiction? And equally, are there are there other roles within the publishing industry that actually would see your day-to-day life being very different in the sort of activities you're doing?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I first started working at my company, I started as an intern across fiction and non-fiction, and I really thought I wanted to be a fiction editor. I had quite a romanticized idea of just editing novels all day, as I think a lot of people do when they apply to publishing. And then I started doing the internship and realized that I would probably be a really bad fiction editor, because everything I read just thought was amazing, and I was like, I don't want to change these characters. Whereas with non-fiction, it was interesting that it felt quite instinctive to know how to make it better, and that really surprised me. So that was one way in which the internship was helpful as well, is it revealed to me a side of the industry that I wasn't necessarily expecting myself to be interested in. Sorry, I've actually forgotten the question now.
So that was a really kind of
other roles.
Yeah, the other roles that you might do within the industry and how different they would be.
I think it's one of maybe one of the biggest flaws at the minute of the industry is that I think a lot of people, and I include myself in this when I was applying, are really unaware of all the other roles that exist outside of editorial. So you've obviously got things like marketing and PR. The audiobook market has changed drastically. You can now get audiobooks on Spotify, so there's a whole audio team. You also have people who are in charge of UK-based sales. You'll have people who are in charge of international sales. You'll have a whole rights team. There's a contracts team. There's an entire side of the business which is operations. As of last year, my company employed someone who's working on figuring out how AI can help the business. So it's constantly evolving. Some companies have roles dedicated just to TikTok Shop, which is amazing. Yeah. So there are so many roles beyond editorial, for sure.
And you mentioned there quite a lot you talked a lot about these kind of things that are evolving within the industry. And I wondered, like, what, if someone's interested in a degree in publishing, like now, but say they're in their first year of an undergraduate or something, what sort of are these evolving trends that you can see? What sort of, I know this is really a mean question, but like, how do you see the industry evolving in the next few years? Because evidently things like AI present presumably an interesting challenge for the publishing industry.
I think if you're a reader, you'll find that you're already participating in the trends without realizing. And part of being in publishing is learning to realize, like, almost work backwards. I think we've seen, like I said, so the introduction of Spotify audiobooks has been really interesting in terms of changing what the kind of dominant demographic of an audiobook listener is or looks like. We now have a lot of people who don't consider themselves readers but listen to music or listen to podcasts that would now listen to an audiobook because it just feels like it's listening to a podcast, but they don't necessarily consider it a book. So that's really interesting. As I mentioned, TikTok Shop. I mean, TikTok has, in some cases, relaunched books that have been out for years. We now, in the same way that you've got kind of bookstagrammers, so people on Instagram who are reading and reviewing books, you also have Book Talk, which is such a booming part of the industry, and has like changed the landscape of romantasy publishing, for example, with things like series like A Court of Thorn and Roses, and it's really widened the fantasy reader demographic as well. And so looking at how things like that are really shaping the industry. And again, like I was saying, books that sometimes have been out for 2 decades but being discovered by a new generation and then being really platformed on TikTok is really interesting to see, again, how much readers influence what's happening with the market, basically.
Yeah. And do you think that there is a kind of, is AI going to change what you do in an industry, do you think, or the way you approach it?
I think it will present benefits and challenges. In some ways, it will really help improve workflows. Obviously, with something like publishing, it can also be a massive threat. I'd like to think that that we will always want books by real people.
Yeah, you'd hope so, wouldn't you? Yeah.
And I think we're already seeing ourselves slowly being trained to try and recognize AI from what's real, even just through things like Instagram posts and or videos. And yeah, we're now having to sort of train ourselves to look for things that maybe suggest if something's been done by AI or not. So I think it's still early for me to say how it will impact the industry, but I think, as with any industry, it will do some good things and it will do some bad things.
Great. And so I guess just to kind of to wrap up, I guess this is another kind of mean question, but if you went back in time and told your kind of graduating self sort of just like one key piece of advice, like what would that be?
I think I'd probably tell myself to not panic. I think I was really worried all the time. And I think, again, coming from a comprehensive state school where it was still so surreal to me that I'd even got in and then graduated. And I didn't come from money. And I had this weird, and this was entirely self-imposed, it wasn't coming from anyone else other than myself, but this weird pressure to prove the value of the degree by immediately getting a really high-paying job. So I thought, okay, I've done this thing, I could like change the trajectory of my family's life now. Everyone I know is going into law and consulting. I need to go and do that. And it was just this constant pressure. And I wasn't really asking myself what I wanted. And I wasn't really thinking about what I wanted to spend my time doing. And I really worried that if I went down a creative route that I would have no money and I would be not validating choosing to do a degree here, which is really sad. And actually that's not, of course it's not true. And you don't, I guess what I'm trying to say is don't, the degree was validated by doing the degree of itself. Working and getting a job after is a different thing. And I'm really glad that I took the risk, and it obviously does have challenges, and a lot of my friends are paid a lot more money than me, and that's okay. And I do still get to live. I have a great quality of life, have amazing friends, and I get to work with amazing people. I love that if I have to go somewhere 5 days a week and spend most of my time doing it, that they're the people that I'm working with. So yeah, I guess it would be to not panic, and it's okay to take your time to figure out what that future looks like for you.